If you want to understand structuralism, or if you want to apply, I hate the word apply, but still, if you want to use structuralism to understand literature, here is the guy. You have to read some of his work. You'll understand, oh, this is structuralist analysis. Okay, we have this Bulgarian historian and literary critic, Tzvetan Todorov. Okay, and Tzvetan Todorov's famous essay, The Typology of Detective Fiction. So we began this class with detective fiction. Let's see how a structuralist looks at detective fiction. Okay, 1966. So he begins this essay with a famous statement. Every great book establishes the existence of two genres. So whenever a great book comes, two things happens. Number one, the genre it transgresses. If you come up with a new work, a great work, it challenges the established tradition, right? The established genre. Then it creates a new genre. So that is a great work. So this is how we read a genre. For instance, Alexander Pope, The Rape of the Lock. The Rape of the Lock challenges the epic tradition. And it comes up with a new genre called mock epic, right? So this is a great book, fine. But there is a problem. We apply this concept only to classic literature. We do not apply to popular fiction or detective fiction. So he said even popular fiction have certain classics, certain norms. So in this work he talks about detective fiction. Under popular fiction he focuses on detective fiction, how there are genres even within detective fiction. We hardly bother about detective fiction or popular fiction. We take it for granted. So when we say detective fiction, the number one type, what do you mean by typology? Typology refers classification, right? First classification. When we say detective fiction, we have a first genre, the whodunit. What is a whodunit? Who did the crime? So in this genre, example, we have Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, which is a whodunit. So someone is killed in the train, on the train moving. We have 12 suspects. So number one, so this is the analysis given by a structuralist analysis, right? Number one, in whodunit, we have two stories. Number one, the story of the crime, how that crime happened. So we follow that story. Another story, the detective, how the detective investigates and solves the murder. So any detective fiction, we have two stories, especially in this genre. Whodunit, the story of the crime and story of the investigation. Okay, so it's more like a purely geometrical architecture. So in this work, Murder on the Orient Express, look at this geometry. 12 suspects, so 12 chapters. So 12 chapters, 12 interrogations. So every chapter, one suspect is interrogated by Hercule Poirot, the detective. And it starts with a prologue, ends with an epilogue. And in the sense, prologue, discovery of the crime, and epilogue, the discovery of the killer. So take any whodunit. So you have the crime, then you finally solve it. So we have two stories. Then we have this another type, the thriller. So thriller, yes, two stories, but the crime is suppressed. We focus more on the investigation. It suppresses the first story. It vitalizes the second story. Take any thriller for that matter. I like this thriller. I read this one. Thomas Harris, there is also a movie. It's a classic. You should watch. The Silence of the Lambs. What is the story? Someone has kidnapped a minister's daughter and a serial killer. Now the serial killer has to be found and the girl has to be rescued. So here we have Agent Sterling, a new girl, and the girl has to find the killer. But in between, we have this madman who is in prison. This madman is a former psychoanalyst, a kind of practitioner. He knows something about the killer. Now this girl, agent, speaks to the madman and she gets clues from the madman to find out the criminal. Fine. So we travel with the second story. We are not bothered about how the serial killer kidnapped that girl. That is not essential. Thriller, all about how we are going to find that serial killer and save the girl. It's not about how he kidnapped. The first story is not important. The second story is important. So that's why prospection takes the place of retrospection. No flashback, only forward. Then what is the difference between whodunit and thriller? 5 more minutes, I will finish it off. Whodunit versus thriller. In whodunit, it creates a curiosity. We start from effect, murder. Then we try to find out the cause. So that is the structure of whodunit. So starting from a certain effect, a dead body or certain clues. Then we find out the criminal and his or her motive. So that is the structure of whodunit. Thriller is suspense in the sense it moves from cause to effect. Any thriller for that matter. What happens? For instance, this series Money Heist. So initially we are shown a group of people who are planning to rob a bank. Right? Cause, effect, will they successfully rob the bank? So that is a thriller. We travel with the present tense. We don't bother about the past tense, who these are, that are. Okay. So whether will they finish the crime or rob the bank, that is more important. So that is why it is called thriller. Move forward. Then in the thriller, there can be more than one detective. We have examples from Chester Himes for Love for Amabel, and more than one criminal or more than one detective. Right. So we have different combinations. But in whodunit, one more thing, difference, thriller doesn't reserve its surprises for the last. We know definitely they are going to rob the bank or not. No, it's not a surprise. But in whodunit, till the last moment, we have to know, hey, who is the killer? Who is the killer? For instance, we have this particular revelation in whodunit. Hercule Poirot said to the James Shepard, the narrator of Murder of Roger Ackroyd, you are the murderer. So that kind of a suspense or last moment thrill is there in whodunit. Then there is this third type, the suspense novel. Suspense novel is a combination of both. The combination of whodunit and the combination of thriller with a difference. Yes, the suspense novel has two stories of the past tense crime and the investigation present, but more importance to the second story, right? Central one, I mean, the second story, investigation is given more importance, but it combines both curiosity and suspense in whodunit and thriller. Example I can give, and there are two types suspense. Number one, the story of the vulnerable detective. So here is a detective who has to travel with everyone, and is not like a traditional detective like Hercule Poirot, who is stands apart and solves the murder. Like think of James Bond, Ian Fleming's Quantum of Solace, especially this one, not the earlier James Bonds, like Daniel Craig's era. This James Bond is beaten and he is caught, he is tortured, right? Here is a detective who loses his immunity. So earlier detectives, they have certain immunities. They just come, solve the murder and go back. But here in suspense, you know, they are also involved in the action. They gets beaten up, badly hurt, constantly integrated into the universe of the characters. So this is a different version. This is suspense, the story of the vulnerable detective. Then another type, the story of the suspect as detective. This is another suspense. So here, all the evidence, you know, some crime like past tense, you know, who done it, and investigation like the second one. All right. So suspense mingles both who done it and this crime, the second type. And this is another type where all the evidence points to a certain person. Now the suspect has to prove himself or herself, his innocence. So we have seen a lot of movies like that. I couldn't think of a literary work. So here is a movie, Enemy of the State. You have Will Smith. He comes across something. Everybody is attacking him. He has to find out why he is being chased. So he has to prove his innocence and also find the criminal. Okay. So this is another suspense. So this is how we have all the three types just for that. So you can understand this. So when we say suspense, it includes both whodunit and thriller. Okay. So with this, let's finish today's class. And the essay is also a simple question. What is to be done with novels which do not fit our classification? So we have whodunit, thriller, suspense. So Todorov says, as I have already said, the new genre is not necessarily constituted by the negation of the main feature of the old, but from a different complex of properties. Sometimes, yes, it will transgress and it would also take some features. So with this understanding, you can understand now the paradigm shift we discussed in the earlier beginning of the class. Now you can understand Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express or Murders of the Roger Ackroyd. And these are some of the works by Todorov. Poetics of Prose, the fantastic. It talks about fantasy. It's a structural study to a literary genre. If you want to understand literary genre or structuralism in general, you can approach this book. Fantasy. So what are the features? Or genres in general, you have an essay, The Origin of Genres. And Todorov has also written a book on Mikhail Bakhtin, The Dialogical Principle. Then Todorov is also a critic on society. You have a book like Conquest of America, The Question of the Other. Then he also talked about humanism in general. Imperfect Garden, The Legacy of Humanism. So with this, we end today's class. Thank you so much.